Chapter 36. Sorry. Mist wrapped itself around the school. It threaded through the skeleton trees that lined the driveway and clung to the frost-bitten bushes opposite them. Very early in the morning, there is sometimes mist in the forest. It lifts in waves like a long-tailed bird forced into the open. Forced to reveal the nest it wanted to hide. The scent of forest and damp earth rise up with the mist. Grandma never allows them out of the compound until the mist is gone. She tells stories of people who lose their way because of it. Stories of Iwin, the tree sprites who play wild games and make the wanderers scramble out of the woods, with eyes flickering with madness on their tongues. Sade peered through the gloom ahead. She recognised a slim figure walking alone, with her head bent forward, covered by a scarf. She hurried to catch up with Mariam. "Please, can we go somewhere? There's something I need to tell you," Sade whispered, her heart pounded. The hall was hardly private. If Marcia and Donna were there, Sade did not want to see them. However, the noisy batches of students took no notice of them as they weaved their way towards an unoccupied corner. Mariam turned to Sade with folded arms. Her dark eyes waited, silently on guard. "I stole for your uncle's shop a lighter, a cigarette lighter." Sade watched for horror and disgust to change the silent face, but not a muscle seemed to move. Mariam's gaze remained steady, as steadfast as Mama's eyes would have been. "Marcia said her cousin would hurt my brother." Sade forced herself to continue. "She and Donna came with me. I took the lighter while they kept talking to your uncle, and..." Her heart was flapping wildly. "That lady is your mother, isn't she?" Mariam nodded, and Sade watched the navy blue headscarf ripple slightly. She recalled how the thin, bony-faced woman in Dowd's store had also stared at her in this guarded way. "My mother, my uncle, they know about the lighter." Mariam's voice was so soft and flat that Sade was unsure she'd heard correctly. "Marcia and Donna, they do the same to me." "But you stopped talking with me, like you don't want to be my friend." You all know. Why didn't your uncle stop me? What did Marcia do to you?" Sade's tongue felt dry and clumsy as her questions stumbled over each other. She ignored the shrill ringing over the tannoy. "They make me steal. From Uncle I must give them a gold pen or do something bad, like fire. But I tell Mama and Uncle, and he gave me the pen. He say, let them think you steal it. People like that are no good. Don't fight them, just keep away. I give Marcia the pen, and they'll leave me alone. But now I see they start with you." Sade did not know what to say or where to look, so Mariam and her family had known all along. Papa would surely not have said the same as Mariam's uncle. How did people know what was the right thing to do? It was all so confusing. Yet she admired Mariam for telling her mother and uncle. At least they'd faced their threats together. The hall was almost empty. Sade forced herself to look straight into Mariam's face. The bell was ringing again. "I'm sorry," she said. "You told me all about your uncle and your mother." Mariam had even spoken about her father's death in prison and her brother who was missing. "I told you nothing." Mariam's eyes seemed to soften. "It's okay. Maybe you're worried about something," she said. "Come, Morris'd go mad if we're late. You see me at break?" Mr. Morris was calling the register when they entered the class. Sade expected to say something cross or sarcastic. However, his gaze seemed to rest on her for an extra second, like he was taking a snapshot on a slow shutter speed. He simply said, "Ah, there you are." Marcia's narrowing eyes couldn't hide a flicker of surprise as Sade followed Mariam down the aisle. Was it at seeing them together again? "Why don't you tell them off, sir? You tell us off if we come late." Donna's words were as spiky as her hair. "Yes, I would, Donna, if only to hear whether your latest excuse was any better than your last." Mr. Morris's words produced muffled laughter and giggles. There even seemed to be some snorts from Kevin's desk. At the end of the register, Mr. Morris announced that the class could talk quietly among themselves until the bell. Then he signalled to Sade. "I'd like a word in private with you, Sade." "Telling you off in private, that's discrimination, that is," Donna hissed into Sade's ear. "Do you want me, sir?" "I come late with Sade." Mariam stood up with Sade. She was coming to her aid, despite everything. "A friend in need," Mama would say. "No, thank you, Mariam. This concerns Sade only," said Mr. Morris. His eyes roamed the classroom. "I shall be outside in the corridor. If your chattering lifts the ceiling, my Christmas present to you will be a detention." Sade followed Mr. Morris, feeling dull and numb. What now? Why did he have to notice her? She had more than enough to worry about already in her other life. If a teacher wanted to have words with her, she would quickly think of Iaro sitting quietly at her desk at home. Iaro who held up her graceful neck and lace-patterned head so calmly that used to soothe any butterflies in her stomach. She tried to think of her Iaro now, but the only picture that came to mind was an Iaro who was dried out, the wood split and cracked. The patterns on this Iaro's hair were furrows eaten by termites. Sade bent her head in dismay. She felt herself crumbling. When Sade next opened her eyes, she was lying on a bed, staring at someone misty and fuzzy. Slowly, the figure of Miss Harcourt. There was no Mr. Morris, no class, no corridor. She was in a small room full of whiteness. White walls around her, white sheet beneath her, white screen at the end of the bed, white chair beside her. Miss Harcourt asked how she was feeling. Sade barely managed to nod. Everything about her felt heavy, most of all her tongue. She watched the teacher's silky chestnut hair swing lightly as she tilted her head. "Ooh, you gave us quite a fright, passing out like that. Mrs. King is on her way now. Need a doctor, probably. But probably stress. We have no idea." Sade drifted in and out of listening. It seemed that the school now knew something about Papa. Did that mean they also knew about Mama? Did they know what happened to Mama after the ambulance men carried away under the blinding white sheet? She didn't know. She didn't know if Papa knew. She didn't even have a proper chance to ask him. If we'd known before, help, cope. Sade shut her eyes and ears. Aunt Gracie's doctor came to the house and declared he could find nothing wrong with her. His eyes twinkled behind thick, round glasses like those of a friendly brown owl. Once again, Sade heard the words cope. It must have been all too much to cope with Mrs. King, even for an adult. You know, it would be too much. What the child needs is rest, and you must encourage her to eat more. Aunt Gracie led the doctor out of the pineapple-coloured bedroom to the door. I think she finds it hard to eat because her father has stopped. The hushed tones trailed down the stairs, out of Sade's hearing.